Part 1. The absence of love. You think hell burns, but it doesn't. It freezes. It is the cold that moves into your chest when love leaves, the silence after warmth, the emptiness that hums where laughter once lived. That is the true fire, the one you cannot see, the one that eats from within. Hell begins the day you stop letting love move through you, the day you start controlling, measuring, demanding, protecting yourself from being hurt again. You call it strength, but it's fear and armor. You call it wisdom, but it's just exhaustion disguised as insight. You call it peace, but it's numbness with candles. Rumi said that love is the soul's blood. When it stops flowing, the body still walks, but the heart decays. You keep smiling, performing, saying the right words, but deep down, there's no pulse, no warmth. You are a monument to what once lived. You think you've found balance, but really you've built a shrine to survival. Hell isn't flames licking your skin. It's waking up every morning knowing exactly who you are and feeling nothing about it. It's the comfort of predictability, the dullness of routine that never asks you to surrender. The walls you built so pain could never reach you have also kept joy out. And the cruelest part, you did it all in the name of protection. Without love, everything turns into noise. Work becomes survival. Relationships become transactions. Even silence becomes a weight you carry like a punishment. You start seeking stimulation just to remember you're alive. The phone, the noise, the screens, the constant pulse of distraction, all of it. An attempt to feel something, anything. You say you want peace, but what you really want is anesthesia, something to dull the ache of not feeling love, not being love, not letting love in. You keep thinking the next thing will fix it, the next person, the next plan. But nothing sticks, because love isn't something you can chase. It's something that happens when you stop running from yourself. The absence of love doesn't look dramatic. It's quiet, respectable. Everyone around you calls it maturity. You've learned to function, to keep things under control. You even talk about spirituality. You post quotes about letting go, about presence. But there's a trembling under the surface. You can feel it in the pauses, in the way your voice catches when you talk about beauty, in the way you look away from your own reflection. You have become so used to emptiness that fullness scares you. Real connection feels dangerous. Vulnerability feels like death. You've built your own hell, brick by brick, out of good intentions and unhealed wounds. You don't even notice the smoke anymore. You call it air. Hell isn't given to you. You maintain it. You feed it. Every time you hide what you truly feel. Every time you say, "I'm fine," when your heart is breaking. Every time you choose pride over truth. Every time you let fear decide how much of you is allowed to live. You think the absence of love is safety, but it's just a slow self-burial. You keep breathing, but not living. You keep smiling, but not glowing. You are the ghost of a fire that forgot how to burn. And the cruel beauty of it all is that love never left. It's been knocking this entire time, waiting for you to stop pretending you don't hear it. When you finally stop running, the first thing you'll feel won't be peace. It will be pain, because that's how love returns, through the ashes of your own silence. But for now, you sit in the cold. You call it strength. You call it clarity. You call it self-sufficiency. And Rumi whispers, almost kindly, "My friend, this is not life. This is your hell before love." Part 2. The architecture of hell. Hell does not appear suddenly. It is built, carefully, brick by brick, habit by habit, thought by thought, No one forces you inside. You simply wake up one day and realize you've been designing it all along. You start with small lies, harmless at first. A smile when you mean no. A silence when your heart screams yes. A promise you break because you don't want conflict. Each one feels like a compromise, but together they form the foundation. Soon you live surrounded by walls made of unspoken truths. You decorate those walls with comfort, a good job, a busy schedule, respectability, a social mask so well polished that even you start to believe it. From the outside, it looks like order. From the inside, it feels like a slow suffocation wrapped in success. Every rule you created to protect yourself becomes another bar on the cage. Don't show too much emotion. Don't trust too quickly. Don't hope too high. Don't love too deep. Each don't sounds wise, but wisdom born of fear is just control wearing perfume. Hell is the architecture of avoidance, the blueprint of denial. You designed your own fortress to keep pain away. But the irony is cruel. Pain lives in the walls. The moment you sealed the cracks, you locked it inside with you. You keep rearranging furniture, new friends, new hobbies, new distractions, but the air doesn't change. The same cold wind moves through every room. It smells like old dreams and burnt intentions. The more you decorate, the emptier it feels. Because hell doesn't need fire to exist. It just needs your unwillingness to feel. You've mistaken control for safety. You've mistaken perfection for peace. You think your house is strong because it doesn't fall apart. But you don't see, it doesn't live either. Nothing grows in a cage, not even you. Rumi once said, "The wound is where the light enters you." But you've plastered every crack. You've made your life smooth and clean, but sterile. You have become the architect of your own disconnection. Every wall you built to keep the storm out has turned your heart into a museum of stillness. You pray for change, but fear movement. You beg for warmth, but hide from fire. You talk about love, but analyze it until it suffocates. You ask for meaning, but keep deleting the moments where meaning tries to enter. The architecture of hell is efficient. It runs on habit. It feeds on routine. It hides behind comfort. It survives through fear of losing control. The devil doesn't need to tempt you. You tempt yourself with safety. There are rooms in you that haven't seen light in years. The ones where you locked your grief, your guilt, your rage, your tenderness. The rooms where your soul still waits, whispering under the dust, "I'm still here." But you rarely visit. You keep the doors closed. You're afraid of what might surface if you look too long. The irony is, what you fear isn't darkness. It's your own capacity to love through it. You call it peace. But peace that avoids pain is just fear with incense. Hell is not chaos. It's perfect order. Everything labeled, everything predictable. No surprises, no surrender. You become a god inside your own creation, worshipped by your fears, imprisoned by your rules. And yet, somewhere deep under the marble floors and locked rooms, a faint warmth still beats. The last ember, the one that refuses to die. It's not there to destroy your house. It's there to remind you, you were never meant to live inside it. Sooner or later, that warmth will grow restless. It will start shaking the walls. Cracks will form. The light will bleed in, and everything you built to protect yourself will tremble. That will be the beginning of the fire. But not yet. For now, you live in the masterpiece of your own making, your private heaven of control, your elegant, silent hell. Part 3. The God of Fear. There comes a moment in every soul's darkness when silence becomes unbearable, when you can no longer blame the world, and you start to hear a quiet voice inside, whispering something you don't want to understand. It says, you worship your fear. You built an altar for it in your heart, and you've been praying there for years without knowing. Fear is patient. It doesn't come with fire or teeth. It comes dressed as care, as logic, as maturity. It speaks softly, like a friend who only wants to keep you safe. It tells you when to stop, when to stay quiet, when to pretend. It rewards obedience with the illusion of control, and so you kneel before it, day after day, believing you are being wise, when in truth, you are being ruled. It's not that you chose fear consciously. It's that you mistook it for truth. Fear said, don't open your heart again. Remember what happened last time. Fear said, don't chase your dream. The world is cruel. Fear said, don't speak your truth. You'll lose them. And you listened. You made those warnings sacred. You called them realism. You called them common sense. You called them God's guidance. Rumi said that false gods do not demand belief, they demand obedience. And fear is the most faithful god humanity ever served. It never asks for love, only loyalty. It gives you safety, but takes your soul. It offers protection, but only from life itself. It whispers, don't feel too deeply, don't trust too fully, don't live too loudly. And you call that wisdom. Soon, you start shaping your world around it. Your relationships become negotiations between two fears. Your dreams shrink until they fit inside your comfort zone. Even your prayers become bargains, promises to stay small if only nothing bad happens. You light a candle to fear every morning and call it caution. Fear knows how to speak your language. It hides inside reason, responsibility, even spirituality. It tells you that detachment is peace, that numbness is balance, that isolation is protection. And you believe it because fear never lies. It simply edits the truth until it's manageable. But every god demands a sacrifice, and the god of fear is no different. It takes your spontaneity first, then your joy, then your tenderness, then your voice. Until one day you wake up and realize that nothing bad has happened to you in years. But nothing alive has happened either. The price of safety is the absence of life. Fear teaches you how to survive, not how to live. It keeps you from dying, but it never lets you be reborn. It wraps you in routines, in predictability, in the familiar. It tells you that growth is too dangerous, that fire burns, that love wounds, that surrender is weakness. It convinces you that peace is found in stillness, but it never tells you that still water can also drown you. And so, you become a temple of anxiety disguised as calm. Your smile becomes a prayer. Your silence becomes devotion. You stop risking anything. You stop changing. You stop burning. You forget that before the fire destroys, it illuminates. The god of fear doesn't need thunder or hellfire. It only needs your quiet agreement, your hesitation, your choice to stay one step away from love. It thrives on your maybe later, your not yet, your I'm not ready. That is how fear wins, not by fighting you, but by convincing you to wait. But love is impatient. Love keeps knocking. And every time you hear its echo, your false god trembles, because deep down, you know the moment you open the door, fear will die. Rumi said, the wound is where the light enters you. But fear says, seal the wound, hide the scar, pretend you are whole. And you obey, because wholeness is the one thing fear cannot allow. To be whole means to be alive, and to be alive means to burn. You have worshipped this god for so long that you forgot how to kneel before anything else. But soon, its temple will shake, the candles will flicker, and for the first time, you will see that what you called faith was only avoidance. What you called safety was only surrender to a god that never loved you. That will be the beginning of liberation, Not when you stop being afraid, but when you finally stop bowing to fear. Part 4. The comfort of suffering. There's a strange thing about suffering. You start by wanting to escape it, and then one day you realize you've built your life around it. Pain becomes a rhythm you understand, a language you know by heart. You tell yourself you hate it, but secretly, you fear the silence that would come if it ever left. Because what would you be without it? Who would you be without your stories of loss, of betrayal, of what they did, of how you survived? You have worn your wounds like jewelry for so long that healing feels like theft. You say you want peace, but peace feels empty compared to the music of your sadness. Suffering gives you identity. It gives you something to hold when everything else slips away. It tells you, you've been through so much, you deserve rest. And you agree. But what you call rest is just resignation. What you call depth is just grief polished into philosophy. You've become proud of your pain. It makes you feel honest, real, awake. But Rumi said, don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. Yet, most never reach the cure. They stay inside the wound, decorating it with meaning, turning it into home. Because pain asks nothing new of you. Love does. Pain you know how to endure. Love asks you to disappear. You've made peace with the ache. It's predictable. You know when it will visit. You even know how to talk about it beautifully. You've built rituals around it. Music, poems, late-night thoughts. It has become a loyal companion, something that defines the edges of your soul. You no longer suffer pain. You curate it. Suffering becomes your last form of control. You can manage it, measure it, explain it. Love, on the other hand, is uncontrollable. It arrives unannounced. It burns. It rebuilds. It dissolves. It makes no promises and gives no guarantees. It requires surrender, not endurance. And surrender terrifies you because it feels like death. You would rather live with a pain you understand than risk a love that might unmake you. You would rather feel heavy than empty. So you cling to the familiar ache. You wear it like armor, convincing yourself it's truth. But truth without love is only half alive. Rumi wrote, "The cure for the pain is in the pain." But you have mistaken the cure for comfort. You sit beside your suffering like an old friend, tracing its scars, feeding it stories, protecting it from the possibility of healing, because healing means change, and change feels like chaos. In the comfort of suffering, you are safe from surprise. You are safe from joy, because joy, too, can shatter you. It demands that you let go of the narratives you've used to survive. It asks you to admit that the war inside you is over, and that peace was not an enemy after all. But peace is terrifying when your whole identity was built on surviving storms. The quiet feels too quiet. The light feels too bright. You don't know how to stand in a world that doesn't hurt. So you find ways to keep the ache alive. A memory, a regret, a conversation that reopens the old wound just enough to remind you who you are. This is the comfort of suffering, the illusion that pain gives meaning. You call it depth, but it's only repetition. You call it strength, but it's only fear dressed as endurance. You call it authenticity, but it's only resistance to what could heal you. And love, patient as always, waits outside the door, not with pity, but with fire. Because love will not comfort your suffering. It will burn it. It will strip you bare of your poetry and show you what silence really is. Not emptiness, but space. You think you are afraid of pain, but you are not. You are afraid of a life without it. A life where you no longer have a reason to hide from joy. Soon, that comfort will start to crumble. Because even pain grows restless when it realizes it has kept you from love too long. And when the first crack appears in the walls of your suffering, you will feel something you haven't felt in years. Heat, the beginning of the fire that does not destroy, but reveals. Part 5. When love appears. Love never arrives the way you expect. It doesn't knock softly or whisper poetry at your door. It comes as a storm that tears through the quiet you've mistaken for peace. It breaks the symmetry of your well-designed life. It drags light into rooms that have never seen it and calls you by a name you've been pretending to forget. At first, you don't recognize it. You think it's chaos. You think something is wrong. Your routines stop working. Your thoughts scatter. Your heart, that loyal machine of control, starts stuttering like a child seeing lightning for the first time. You call it anxiety, but it's resurrection. You call it danger, but it's truth returning. Rumi said, "Love is the flame which, when it blazes, consumes everything except the beloved." You think he meant romance, but he meant demolition. He meant that when real love arrives, it doesn't ask for permission. It burns through your plans, your logic, your self-image, your boundaries, until nothing false can breathe. At first, you fight. You call it discernment. You analyze it, question it, pray for clarity. But love doesn't negotiate. It doesn't explain itself. It moves through you like fire through dry wood, and everything you built to stay safe starts to smoke. You feel it in your chest, that unbearable heat that is not pain, but feels like dying. You start shaking, not because you're afraid of love, but because you know that to let it in, you'll have to stop being who you've always been, the self you've crafted, protected, polished. It starts to crack. The walls you built to survive begin to hum with pressure, as if the air itself wants to set them on fire. Love doesn't arrive to make you feel better. It arrives to make you real. It wants nothing from you except everything. It doesn't want your prayers, your promises, or your purity. It wants your surrender. It wants your control. It wants the version of you that hides behind every, "I'm fine." You say, "But I've been hurt before." Love says, "That wasn't me." You say, "I can't survive another loss." Love says, "You were never meant to survive. You were meant to be reborn." You say, "It's too much." Love says, "You've mistaken comfort for life." There's a moment, brief, terrifying, when you realize that what you've been calling yourself is just everything that came before love, and all of it begins to tremble under the weight of what's coming. The masks don't fit anymore. The lies lose their flavor. Even your pain starts to feel false, rehearsed, thin. Love doesn't need to argue. It just is, and its presence alone makes all imitation impossible. You will try to escape. Everyone does. You'll run back to the familiar, to distraction, to routine, to noise. But everything will taste like ash, because once love shows you the real, the unreal loses its color. The world will look the same, but feel hollow. Nothing can return you to who you were. Love ruins you beautifully, Rumi said. When love knocks and you run, you are running from yourself. You'll hear that echo inside your ribs. The truth is, you never feared love. You feared exposure. Love is the light that reveals what's still pretending. It's the silence that ends every excuse. It's the question that can't be answered, only lived. When love appears, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It arrives like destiny disguised as a storm, and it begins its sacred work. You will lose what you thought was yours, your peace, your certainty, your control, and in the ashes, you will find something far more terrifying: freedom. And in that freedom, there will be no applause, no comfort, no promises, only the raw pulse of existence, alive and burning, whispering the words you once feared most. Now you must become what you seek. Love will not save you. It will unmake you. It will take your hand and lead you straight into the fire you've spent your whole life avoiding. And when you finally stop fighting, when you finally stop begging for mercy, you'll see that mercy was never outside you. It was waiting at the center of the flame all along. This is the moment when the real story begins, not the story of falling in love, but of falling apart until nothing remains but love itself. Part 6. The first burn. You thought the fire would be poetic. You imagined some golden glow of awakening, a moment of peace and revelation. But when it comes, it's brutal. It doesn't look divine. It looks like collapse. The warmth turns to heat, and the heat turns to pain. The walls begin to shake. The air thickens. Everything you've used to hold yourself together starts falling apart in slow motion, and there's no safe word to stop it. This is not the fire you dreamed of. It's not mystical. It's cellular. It happens in your bones, in your thoughts, in the space behind your ribs. You can feel it moving, stripping, consuming. You try to breathe, but the air feels heavy, like it's filled with your own history. Love doesn't enter quietly. It invades. It floods every corner of you, and everywhere it touches, something false dies. At first, you call it heartbreak, but it's not. It's heartbirth. The breaking is the opening. The pain is the sound of resistance dying. You've spent your life building a self to protect you, a name, a story, a way of walking in the world. And now that self burns like dry wood, you try to save pieces of it, but every time you reach into the fire, your hands turn to light, Rumi said. The fire you fear will become your home. You never understood what that meant until now, because the burn isn't punishment. It's purification. The flames don't hate you. They love you so much that they refuse to let you stay small. They devour only what you never truly were. They turn illusion to ash so the real can finally breathe. It's strange how the burning feels like dying and being born at the same time. Your thoughts flicker like old film. Your emotions rise and collapse like waves. Your identity melts into something unrecognizable. You try to name what's happening, but words fail. Every explanation turns to smoke. You can't make sense of it, because the part of you that seeks sense is what's burning. There are moments when you want to beg for the fire to stop. You drop to your knees and whisper that you've had enough. But the flames are silent. They just keep moving, patient, merciful in their own cruel way. They don't listen to your words. They listen to your surrender. Every time you let go, even a little, the heat softens. Every time you resist, it flares again, and then you see it. The pattern. The fire doesn't hurt when you stop fighting. It hurts only when you cling. The pain was never in the burning. It was in the holding on. The moment you release, even for an instant, the flames turn into light. They stop devouring and start revealing. You realize you're not being destroyed. You're being refined. Your tears become the steam of old memories dissolving. Your breath becomes prayer without words. You begin to see that you were never separate from the fire. You are the fire. You just forgot. For years, you called it suffering. Now you see it's mercy wearing flame. Rumi said, "Don't resist the fire. It shows you what is gold." And now, inside your own inferno, you finally understand. What burns is the false self. What glows is the soul. Every scream turns to silence. Every fear turns to light. What remains is unbearably still. A quiet you can't describe, because there's no one left to describe it. You used to think awakening would make you more peaceful, more wise, more in control. But awakening is subtraction. It's everything you thought you needed being taken from you until you see that you were never missing anything. The burn isn't about improvement. It's about revelation. As the flames calm, you begin to feel something new, not joy, not sadness, something deeper. Presence, the kind that doesn't need explanation. You feel empty, but not lost. Hollow, but whole. The ashes cool, and you realize they're not the remains of you. They're the remains of everything that kept you from being you. And somewhere in that silence, love speaks again. Not in words, but as warmth. A steady pulse beneath the ribs. The message is simple, almost tender. This is not the end. This is the beginning of seeing. You don't move. You just breathe. Smoke rises. Light drifts through. You have nothing left to protect. You have nothing left to prove. You are fire, and you are free. Part 7. The collapse. There is a moment after the fire when everything goes quiet. Not peaceful, not calm, just empty. The noise of burning fades, the struggle stops, and you find yourself standing in the ruins of who you used to be. The air smells of smoke and memory. You look around, and there's nothing left to hold on to. The self that fought so hard to survive is gone, and for the first time, you're not sure whether you lost something or were finally released. You think you've reached the end, but it's not the end. It's the space after endings, that vast silence between destruction and creation. The world hasn't changed, but your eyes have. You look at your hands, your breath, the fragments of what used to define you, and they no longer mean what they did. You've fallen out of the story. The script has burned, and now you're in the terrifying freedom of a blank page. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." Now you understand. The breaking was never punishment. It was preparation. Every collapse you feared was just an opening disguised as loss. The walls you built to protect yourself have crumbled, and what's left isn't weakness. It's space. Space for light. Space for truth. Space for what you really are to finally take a breath. But emptiness is not easy. It has no shape, no comfort, no direction. It stretches endlessly, and your mind begins to panic. You start reaching for something familiar, a thought, a role, a plan, anything that can rebuild the illusion of control, but everything slips through your fingers. You try to think your way out, but thinking no longer works here. The mind has no tools for this kind of silence. You feel weightless and exposed. You try to speak, but words dissolve before they leave your lips. You try to pray, but even prayer feels like noise. The truth is, there's nothing left to say, nothing to ask for, nothing to prove. The only thing left is to be raw, unguarded, transparent. It feels like death, but it's not. It's birth without anesthesia. The collapse isn't destruction, it's revelation. It's everything false falling away, so the real can appear. You've been living under layers of self for so long that nakedness feels unbearable. But this is the point, to stand in the ruins and not rush to rebuild. To see that the silence isn't empty. It's alive. Slowly, you begin to sense it. The hum beneath everything. A vibration so subtle, it feels like breath itself. The air seems to shimmer. The world is both distant and impossibly close. You feel small, but not powerless. Fragile, but not broken. The boundaries between you and everything else start to dissolve, and you realize that the collapse didn't destroy you. It revealed you. This is what Rumi meant when he said, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." You didn't lose your identity. You lost your cage. The the fragments you thought were you have turned to dust. But in that dust, something eternal stirs. You begin to laugh, quietly, almost in disbelief, the laughter of someone who finally sees the joke, that all your suffering was a dance around a truth too simple to notice, that what you were chasing, defending, fearing to lose, was never real. And now that it's gone, you're not missing anything. You're lighter than air. The mind still tries to return. It whispers, "What happens now? Who will you become? What's next?" But you don't answer. You just listen. And in that listening, something vast and ancient begins to move inside you, not as thought, but as presence. The collapse is not a tragedy. It's the first honest silence. The death of the false is the birth of the sacred. The more you surrender to the emptiness, the more it starts to fill with light. Not the light of answers, but of being. And when you finally stop trying to rebuild yourself, when you finally accept that there's nothing left to fix, the ashes at your feet begin to glow. Not with memory, not with hope, just with awareness. The realization that the fire never ended. It only changed shape. You are not what burned. You are what remains. Part 8. The recognition. At first, it feels like nothing, just stillness, the kind that makes even breathing feel intrusive. The fire is gone, the noise is gone, and all that remains is this vast quiet. You sit in it, waiting for something to happen, a sign, a voice, some divine proof that the suffering meant something. But nothing comes, only silence, only space, and for the first time, you don't try to fill it. That's when you notice it, the warmth. Subtle at first, almost imagined, rising from somewhere inside you. Not as emotion, but as presence. You realize the light you thought was outside has always been within. It isn't arriving, it's revealing. It was here through every pain, every collapse, every moment you called darkness. It never left. You just couldn't see it through the smoke. You begin to understand that the fire was not an enemy. It was a teacher with impossible patience. It burned only what could not stay. It stripped away the costumes, the defenses, the lies, until the truth stood naked. And that truth is terrifyingly simple. You were never unloved. You were never lost. You were only hidden beneath everything that said you were. Rumi said, "The fire was never against you. It was sent to bring you home." Now you feel what those words mean. Every pain that broke you was love in disguise, wearing the mask of destruction. Every door that closed was love protecting you from smaller rooms. Every loss was an opening. Every ending was mercy with smoke in its hair. Recognition doesn't come as a thought. It comes as a soft ache in the chest, a kind of tender disbelief. You realize how deeply you misunderstood life. You spent years fighting shadows, thinking they were demons, while all along they were love's strange reflections, shaping you for the moment you could finally see. The tragedy wasn't that you suffered. It's that you didn't know what the suffering was for. You see now that love never left you. It was there when you were building your walls, whispering, "I'll wait." It was there when you bowed to fear, saying, "I understand." It was there when you collapsed, silent, patient, holding the space for your return. Love doesn't abandon. It hides within the chaos, disguised as pain, so you'll go looking for it where you least want to. Everything looks the same, yet nothing is. The world hasn't changed, but the way you see it has. The ordinary glows. The air feels alive. The simplest things, a sound, a shadow, a breath, carry a quiet holiness. You begin to sense that love isn't something that happens between beings. It is the fabric that holds all beings. It doesn't visit. It reveals itself when resistance dies. You no longer feel the need to search. The search was part of the illusion. You realize that the one who was seeking love was made of the same substance as the love being sought. The seeker and the flame were never two. The distance was never real. The fire didn't come to you. It came from you. And this realization breaks something open in you. Not pain this time, but reverence. A humility so vast it feels like prayer. You look back at everything that hurt you, and instead of anger, you feel gratitude. You whisper, "I see it now. You were never against me." Recognition isn't a victory. It's a surrender. It's the moment when the war ends. Not because you've won, but because you finally understand there was never an enemy. The fire, the loss, the loneliness, all of it was love trying to get your attention. And now that it has it, it doesn't need to burn anymore. You start to smile, not because you're healed, but because there's nothing left to heal. The fire revealed that the wound was never a flaw. It was a doorway, and on the other side of that doorway stands love itself, unmasked, radiant, patient as eternity. Rumi said, "When you finally open your heart, you will see that love was never coming toward you. It was always inside you, waiting to be seen." Now you know what he meant. You close your eyes. The warmth deepens. You whisper softly, "It was you all along." And for the first time in your life, the silence feels like home. Part 9. The Return. You wake up one morning, and the world is still here. The same streets, the same sky, the same faces, but something has shifted. Not out there, but in the space between things. The air feels softer. The colors seem fuller. Time moves differently, slower, as if it's finally breathing with you instead of against you. Nothing dramatic has changed, yet everything has. You walk through your life as if you've been gone for centuries. Every sound feels sacred. Every movement feels deliberate. Even pain, when it visits, no longer feels like an enemy. It's just another ripple in the ocean that you now know you are part of. The noise of life doesn't overwhelm you anymore. It flows through you, like wind through an open window. This is the return, not to heaven, but to earth, not to some imagined perfection, but to the real, unedited world. The dishes still need washing, the bills still come, the body still aches, but now you see it all as part of the same dance. Nothing feels separate. Nothing feels wasted. The ordinary has become luminous. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But now you understand the other half. The light never leaves. It lingers in everything. It hums in the background of your every breath. The same fire that burned through your illusions now burns quietly in your chest, not destroying, but illuminating. You no longer chase meaning. Meaning is everywhere. You no longer chase peace. Peace follows you. Even chaos has softened. It doesn't scare you anymore. You've seen what lies beneath it, and you know now that even the storm is made of light. You've stopped dividing the world into good and bad, sacred and ordinary, love and loss. It's all one movement, one pulse, one endless act of becoming. You meet people and don't try to fix them. You don't try to be understood. You simply listen, and in your listening, something silent moves between you. A quiet recognition, a spark that doesn't need words. You see the fear in others and remember your own, and instead of judgment, you feel compassion. Because you know now that fear is not the absence of love. It's love not yet recognized. There's a gentleness to everything. Even your old memories, The ones that once made you ache now feel like holy ground. You look back on the pain and see the shape of grace in it. The betrayals, the losses, the nights of silence, all of them were threads weaving you back to yourself. Nothing was wasted. Not a tear, not a wound, not a moment. Love has returned, but it feels different now. It's not a feeling, not an emotion, not even a relationship. It's an atmosphere, a presence. It moves through everything, like light through water. It doesn't belong to you, and yet, it's all you are. You don't fall in love anymore. You fall into love, the same way you fall into breath, into being, into this endless now. Rumi said, "Heaven was never elsewhere." Now you see that heaven was always hidden in the simplest things, in the touch of wind, in the silence between words, in the heartbeat behind your ribs. Heaven was not waiting after death. It was waiting after illusion. It appears not when you reach it, but when you stop running from what is. You no longer need to understand everything. You no longer need to prove anything. You've stopped looking for signs because you've realized that everything is a sign. The return is not an arrival. It's a remembering. You have come back to the same world, but now you walk through it as light walks through glass. Transparent, unattached, unafraid. The world still burns, but now the fire doesn't hurt. It glows. The same flames that once terrified you now dance as your companions. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You whisper, "Thank you." You no longer ask for mercy. You see that you were always swimming in it. You've come home, not to a place, not to a belief, but to the truth that has been burning quietly inside you since the beginning. The truth that love was never something to find, but something to remember. The journey was never about escaping hell, but realizing that hell was only the shadow cast by love, unrecognized. And now, standing here, in the same body, in the same world, you finally understand. The fire was never meant to end. It was meant to become light. Part 10. The flame that remains. It begins with quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't empty, but alive. The kind of silence that breathes. You sit inside it, not as someone trying to meditate, but as someone who has finally stopped running. You don't chase peace anymore. You are peace. You don't speak about love anymore. You are love. Everything unnecessary has burned away, and what's left is simple, radiant, whole. You no longer feel separate from the world. The air that moves through you is the same air that stirs the trees. The light that falls on your skin is the same light that glows behind your eyes. You look at the faces of others and see the same fire flickering inside them. Some hidden, some trembling, some still covered by smoke. But you recognize it now. You no longer try to teach, to convince, to awaken. You simply see, and your seeing becomes prayer. Rumi said, "I no longer pray. I am the prayer." You understand that now. Prayer is no longer something you send upward. It rises from you like heat from a candle, effortless, constant, unseen. Every breath becomes a hymn, every step a confession, every heartbeat an offering. You live as a flame that doesn't need to be noticed, because its only purpose is to burn. You move through life gently, but with gravity. You speak less, but your silence speaks more. You love without reason. You forgive without memory. You live without armor. The old reflexes, the need to prove, to defend, to control, are gone. You don't need to protect what you have become, because what you've become cannot be harmed. You are not pure light. You are light and shadow together, dancing. You no longer reject your human pain. You hold it tenderly, knowing it's part of the song. Love isn't perfection. It's inclusion. It holds everything, even the darkness, without judgment. You no longer divide yourself into pieces that deserve light and those that don't. Everything belongs. Everything is sacred. The world is still imperfect, still trembling, still burning in its own way. But now you see that the fire isn't destruction. It's transformation happening everywhere. Every breaking is a door. Every cry is a prayer in disguise. Every soul is walking through its own flame, learning to see that the heat is love in motion. You've stopped seeking heaven in another world. Heaven happens here, in this breath, in this body, in this moment that keeps unfolding like light from an endless source. The fire that once terrified you is now your teacher, your home, your heart. You don't fear it anymore because you know what it burns, only illusion. What it leaves behind is truth, Rumi said. When you let go of who you think you are, what remains is what you truly are. You look within, and what you find isn't a person, but a presence, a still flame that needs no air, no fuel, no reason. It simply is, the flame that remains when everything else has turned to ash. The flame that was always there, even in your darkest night. And you understand now that love was never about feeling. It was about remembering that you were never separate from the divine fire. You are it, burning in human form. You smile, not the smile of achievement, but of recognition. The same light that once burned your illusions now warms your soul. You whisper, almost to the air itself, it was all love. And somewhere beyond words, beyond thought, beyond the need for stories, the flame whispers back, yes, it always was. You sit in the quiet glow of that truth. You don't need to reach enlightenment. You don't need to become anything. You just breathe, and the breathing itself is holy. And if someone asks what happened to you, you will simply smile and say, I stopped fighting the fire, I became it. So let this be the final prayer, not spoken, not begged, but lived, to burn without fear, to love without walls, to live as the light that never dies. If this story found you, it means the fire already knows your name. Let it in. If these words touched something in you, share them. Maybe they'll light another spark. And if this journey stirred your own, stay close, subscribe, like, or simply whisper thank you to the flame inside you. That's all love ever wanted.